Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Football Experience brought to you by On The Pod. Caleb and I are back for, a sad starting edition, but we won't start on the North London Derby just yet. We'll get into that. The first thing that we were talking about off air was actually, Caleb, how good are chips in Australia, like potato chips or potato crisps, depending on where you are in the world, compared to anywhere else in the world. I'll let you lead that on.
I just think we have the best chips, and you wouldn't. It's not something like we're renowned for, but I think we should be. We just got so many flavors, and we just got so many different chip varieties. You've got like the Red Rock Delis, or you've got the Thins or the Smiths, but there's so many flavors. You go to other places, and some of the flavors like cheese and onion Walkers in England are really good. Quavers are great. But, I mean, they're both like cheese-based flavors, and there wasn't much else. There wasn't your honey sweet chicken, or it wasn't your sweet chili sour cream that I know you love. So just think we're underrated. We should be overlooked for this accomplishment that we have with our great chips.
Look, I'm gonna just concede the point because I'm obviously here in Croatia, as everyone knows. And I was telling you the one chip and the one chip flavor as well. So like the way that it's made and the I guess the potato they use and the flavor that they use is the Lay's. And I think in England they're called Walkers, but Lay's Max Crisp, I think they are, paprika chips. They're the only chips that are on the level of a Red Rock Deli. Everything else just like falls like miles short. Like if a Red Rock Deli for me is like 10 out of 10, the Lay's is a 10 out of 10, but everything else is like a 5 or a 6. And as you said with the flavors, there's only like paprika, salt. They don't even have salt and vinegar here, dude.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's why.
They have sour cream and onion, and I think I've seen like a cheddar, like a cheese cheddar like flavor, and like that's it. That's it.
They're like a cheesy chip.
Yeah, well, I haven't tried
by
it.
the way, we do those deep cut, the thick ones like the Lay's style. I think the Thins have brought them out here, or the Smiths.
Yeah, Smiths were the only like sort of that like wavy crinkle cut.
They've brought like a thicker one, like the style of those Lay's ones over in Croatia.
Yeah, like the Lay's ones are like something in between a Red Rock Deli in terms of like crunch and like a Smith's in terms of like the waviness, I suppose.
I just love chips, man.
who does who doesn't love a good potato, man?
I know.
But look, enough about the taters. Oh wait, did you have screw Spurs? Just before we do get onto that, because you've been to America, I haven't. Did you have potato chips there? Like how did theirs rate?
Yeah, there was like a lot of just like those stock flavors, like you said, sour cream and onion. Original, obviously. I think they had a few variations of barbecues, like a lot of cheesy ones, like your Cheetos and stuff, but no like gourmet flavors, like the Red Rock Deli's brought over here, and like all the Pringles flavors as well. We get it's quite crazy. And,
Yeah.
The US ones were very very ordinary.
Yeah, or even like the kettle, which is like a sort of like when you order Red Rock Deli off Wish. Kettle actually decent. Like when they're on special, I'll go for a bag of kettle, over a full priced Red Rock Deli.
Oh yeah. The specials. You're not paying nearly $5 for a bag of chips.
Oh man, like who knows these days? Like even on special, $5 might be the price with inflation and all that stuff. But look, I digress. Let's not get into finance here. Let's get into the North London Derby, and that was something between I'm gonna. I stopped watching at halftime. I didn't even bother watching the second half. So you can tell, I guess, what my thoughts are or what they should be. I'm gonna let you take it away because I have very very little to say. Maybe I'll just ask you: do you think that was a penalty?
Oh yeah, yeah, I do think it was a penalty,
Do you
and
think it was soft?
Uh, no, because I hate that. I hate when defenders do that. They think they've done like enough, and this one differentiates from all the other ones we see in the fact that I think he gets him more in the back than he does side by side. Son definitely sells it, but the defender's not going for the ball in those situations anyway. So I don't. While I don't want to see all of those given, I thought that one was enough in the back with the ball in that area to give a penalty for it. I thought it was clumsy from Cedric, and while it could not have been given as well, it was just in that area where he gave the referee a decision to make. And look, we spoke about it in the last pod. Could Cedric do that job on Son? Well, in that moment he couldn't. They let him get wrong side, and then I think they said the punditry afterwards said it looked like he panicked a little bit, and he probably did. So I thought it was a penalty. I don't know what you thought on that one.
Look, I'm trying to remain as neutral as I can here, and like I can see why it was given. I do think it was I do think it was a little bit soft. And like I watched a little bit of or listened to a little bit of Talk Sport with Jamie O'Hara and Jason Cundy and good old Cundy. He said if it wasn't given, VAR wouldn't have overturned it, and since it was given, VAR wasn't going to overturn it. So like VAR wouldn't have stepped in on either way that the referee leaned, which I can see. And yeah, it sort of reminded me of like how we spoke about like sort of like touch fouls, and like I guess this was like a little bit stronger than a touch foul, but like for me it was a little bit on the softer side. But yeah, like you still shouldn't be doing that. And I guess like we'll get into obviously like the whole, I guess the lineups and stuff like that, and how we spoke about them from the last pod. The second question that I have before I guess you get into any sort of analysis is, what did you think of the red card decision as well? Because initially when I saw it, I was like, it's just a shoulder bump and Son is selling it. But then when I saw like replays of it, Holding did raise his elbow to the face, which, you know, it's a yellow card offense, 100%. So, yeah.
And again, this one falls in the same category as you've given the referee a decision to make. Why have you done that? Why have you put yourself in that position? Because obviously, and I know in the analysis at halftime they showed all three fouls that led to the first booking. And I think when you foul that often, it's hard to escape. Some of the artists that doing that are actually Casemiro and Fabinho. I don't know how they escaped that game against Tottenham last week with Fabinho. Conte even referenced it in the post-match, but he should have got a few yellow cards with all the tackles. So some players are masters of getting away with it, obviously.
I think they don't do it within 5 minutes. They do it like spread over the course of like 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes.
Yeah. I have seen Fabinho and Casemiro get close to it, though. I'm just thinking, how are they not? But yeah, Holding obviously couldn't get away with it. And just that second one, while there's so many different ways you could play. You could just block off the run by running in front of him. You don't even have to turn and look at him. You could just let him run into your back and nothing will happen. In fact, you might get the free kick if you do that. But why he looks at him, sizes him up, and then just leans his body in with an arm leading is just ridiculous on a yellow card.
But the elbow was up
again,
as well,
like,
not just like if the elbow was tucked into the body, it wouldn't have been given a yellow, I don't think. But he actually raised.
It would have been extremely soft for that to be a yellow card if he didn't raise his arm. I mean, the only thing you could look at is why is he sizing him up and leaning his body into him. But yeah, that would have been super soft if you get a yellow for that. But the fact was his arm was up there, and I mean, it gave the referee a decision to make, and the referee was, as you'd often see and expect as well, was making decisions that were maybe, well, that second one wasn't 50-50, but the penalty may be 50-50. You hear the big appeal from the crowd. Maybe that influences the decision. And I don't know. I don't think that's wrong, really, because you can expect that in human nature, and that's part of having a home ground advantage. I mean, you expect decisions like that to maybe be swayed a little bit by the crowd's reaction. So it wasn't egregious. I don't think it was. It wasn't like these decisions were so bad that you couldn't believe they were made. Really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, look, I agree with you on those points. Like, and like I guess the accumulation of fouls in such a short period of time, like, led to the ref having to make the decision, and but it's also like, I don't know, it's just a lack of, I don't know what it was, but like once you're on a yellow and like a yellow so early, like, isn't your instinct, or like, not even instinct, but isn't your experience as a player to think, okay, I need to lay off here for, the next 20, 30 minutes, get through the half, and then, calm down a little bit, because he was putting in some pretty rash, it wasn't rash tackles, but it was rash handling, like actually like handling of Son. So yeah, it was, for me, it's down to either lack of experience or just lack of concentration that led to him making stupid decisions.
Yeah, and Arsenal looked a little wound up after the penalty as well. And I don't know if they were maybe 2 up for the game. Like we've seen with another team, Leeds, recently, they look way too up for games, and maybe that was the case for Rob Holding. He's just too hyped. He wants to get tight on everything, and then he wants to leave a little bit on Son when he's trying to make the run. Maybe he was just too wound up for this game, because I think you're 100% right. There's just a lack of awareness when you're on the yellow card. Even after you've made the first 2 fouls, like a lack of awareness to not make the third one within that 5 to 10 minute period. Just lay off a little bit. But yeah, just maybe the only thing I could point to is too wound up. Otherwise, it's a terrible performance. But he's not that convincing. He should, if Arsenal want to progress, Rob Holding should really be maximum your fourth choice centre back. I think maybe fifth.
Yeah, and all right, so obviously Ben White's been injured, I think, for the past 2 weeks. And we spoke about whether Tomiyasu should be utilised on the left to then free up Martinelli, or whether he should be brought back onto the right to mark up Son. My initial thoughts were, okay, Ben White, like, and I think that was the talk, like Ben White, it's only like a niggling sort of injury, so he should be back for the North London derby, which means that he can sort of cover for the lack of quality that Cedric brings and that lack of composure, which means that Son could be dealt with, but then you have such a weak right-hand side, like right hand for Arsenal, with Cedric and Holding, that Son is he actually, because like you sort of didn't know, like with the penalty, I guess Son got caught between Cedric and Holding. So whose responsibility is to pick him up there? Because I think it was a Sessegnon that was behind Cedric as well, because like 2 players went up to challenge that ball from memory. So was that Holding's responsibility, who lost the track of Son? And should Tomiyasu have been played as a right back and bring in Tavares to then deal with Son, considering that you know that you're not going to start Ben White?
Well, another question as well is, why can't Cedric just play on the left and Tomiyasu on the right? I think in many ways Cedric would be more suited to the left-hand side, because I'm not as afraid of the mobility of Kulusevski, even though for a big guy he's pretty mobile. But I'm not scared about that, like in the same way I am with Son on the other side. And there's no doubt Tomiyasu's a better athlete than Cedric. He's a better defender all round than Cedric, especially at this stage of Cedric's career. But Cedric playing on that left could maybe just go with Kulusevski as he wants to drive inside onto his left foot, and then he's not going to want to overlap like we spoke about, so he can give Martinelli that space to play and free up Martinelli on that side. So I think that's a chance missed to just swap them around so that you've got your better defender dealing with arguably the best player in the Premier League at the moment in Son Heung-min, who's just playing outstanding football. So to leave Cedric on an island with him, and I know this wasn't like a 1v1 situation or anything like that, but just in the manner that Son was getting away and making whatever runs he wanted to, driving through the heart of midfield, just getting away from his man consistently. I think that's a missed opportunity. In terms of what happened with the penalty, it's an interesting point because it's kind of a microcosm of what was happening in the game. In Tottenham playing that 3-4-3 and Arsenal playing the normal 4-2-3-1, really struggled to match up with it. So you saw that situation at the back post with Sessegnon coming from deeper. But the problem is Son's already occupying. So who put the cross in? I failed to remember, but
was it Kulusevski?
Yeah, okay.
I think he cut in onto his left and then crossed it in. It was an in-swinger, yeah.
I was pretty sure, but I just wanted to make sure that Kane was in the box and I'm recalling it right. So now the Gabriel and Holding have to be worried about Harry Kane. Son's already in between Holding and Cedric. So in that moment, it just has to be perfect communication between Cedric and Holding to make sure who's that man. But Son's occupied such a clever pocket. It's hard to deal with that because Cedric has the added man of Sessegnon coming around the back, who I think has been in really good form there. So when you play the 3-4-3 against that 4-2-3-1, it's really hard to match up, especially in those wide areas, because obviously Son and Kulusevski are going to be in the eye line of the fullbacks. They're going to want to take up those pockets and overload the midfield. But if the fullbacks just get sucked in too much, then the wing backs are able to get over on the overlap, and now you've got a 5v4 at the back. So I thought that was an interesting little microcosm of what happened and how Tottenham and you see it a lot as well when teams play a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2. Very often the opposition want to match up against it because of those problems that it causes with the later arriving wingbacks. But you can always counter that by playing a high quality possession based brand of football and pushing it back, like what actually I thought Arsenal were doing in the first 10 to 15 minutes. I thought they started the game pretty strong. Tottenham were getting pushed back, and then I guess I felt maybe El Neni and Xhaka just lost control of the midfield a little bit in the lead up to the penalty, and Tottenham just started to gain control of that area, in particular with Kulusevski and Son in particular coming infield and creating those problems that we just spoke about. And then it just all went wrong for Arsenal in that, 20 minutes or whatever it was. So, but yeah, I thought in terms of the analysis, that's what I saw from the first half. And much like you, I watched the third goal go in at the start of the second half, and then I was completely zoned out. I didn't really watch the rest.
And it just seemed like it was sort of like a I wouldn't necessarily say men against boys, but you know how we talked last week or last episode how Tottenham just match up really well against certain teams because they seem to be a very physical team. And considering the age and inexperience of Arsenal, it's a very good matchup for them. So it's it showed that there's definitely something lacking there, and I'd say more inexperience lacking there, and also it showed that we're missing players. Like we were missing Ben White, technically we're missing Tomiyasu on his preferred position, we're missing Tierney, and we're missing Partey in the midfield, even though El Neni has stepped in pretty well for Partey in the last couple of weeks. But even so, I think a full strength Arsenal, I don't think we get found out like that. And that for instance, the penalty, I don't think that happens because Tomiyasu wins a header there. I don't think because I think he's like a foot taller than Cedric. And I don't think he's pushing Son in the back there. He's actually challenging for the header and he actually gets his head onto it.
No, I totally agree. And when you list off all the absentees for Arsenal, You just think if they were out on the pitch, they really would have made a difference. I mean, Tierney coming in and allowing Tomiyasu to play in the right position and Ben White being at the back there, I think they're a lot more solid. Although Ben White is sometimes a little bit suspect with aerial balls, but he couldn't have been worse than Rob Holding in this game. And then Partey in the midfield, maybe you don't lose control quite so badly. So it was just a bad night, but we got to remember that Tottenham had to come into this game desperate. They were playing at home, and no matter what happened, Arsenal were going to be above them in the table at the end of the night. So, I mean, you think it's a North London derby, and you think the team should be up for it, and maybe they were too up for it, like we said. But the fact is, you'd think that those factors alone for Tottenham would give them an extra 2 or 3% because that desperation can't be replicated when it's not only a North London derby for you, but you're challenging. You've got to win this game if you want any chance at all to finish top four. And I just don't think Arsenal, even tonight, especially with the absentees, they just didn't seem to be getting to that level of desperation after their initial 10 to 15 minutes start.
Yeah, like it seemed like they were almost thought that top four was already secured, and they just got a reality check. So
the race is back on.
Look, it's still in their hands. Like they just need to win the next two games, and it's Newcastle who's no longer desperate as a relegation candidate, and they haven't been for a long time. So who knows whether they're really playing for anything, and they just got blown away. Was this weekend that just passed? They got was it 5-0 by City?
Yeah.
So that could go one of two ways. They either come in low on confidence because they just shipped 5 goals, or Eddie Howe tells them, let's keep it solid at the back and not concede. So it's similar to Southampton when they faced us after just shipping 6 against Chelsea. And then we have Everton, who, if they can secure themselves from the relegation battle this weekend, then I think that's going to be they won't come into that game as, I guess, with such a fighting spirit, I suppose. But if they come in knowing that they need 3 points, or even if they need just a draw to win or to survive, that's going to be an extremely, extremely tough game, because I think Tottenham only have Burnley and then they have Norwich to finish off with. So they have a easier run-in than us.
Yeah, well, you could, in that run-in for each team, you could potentially have 2 teams fighting for their life, because no doubt Tottenham already have Burnley who are fighting for their life. And it may come down to Everton are fighting for their life when they come to the Emirates. So that in itself makes both those games tricky. And we know what happened for Tottenham last time they played Burnley away, with Conte's comments after the game pretty much throwing the players under the bus. So we know that a game plan like Burnley's can frustrate Tottenham, and we've said it before. I mean, Tottenham perform against the bigger teams, but they don't necessarily perform against the lower teams. That's why they're not in the top 4, and that's why they're now less favourite to be in the top 4, even though this win gives them at least a little bit of hope. So, look, honestly, between those games, well, I think if Everton come in needing a point, if Everton come in needing a win, that might be good for you guys. But if Everton come in needing a point, that could be a really nervy afternoon, and that could have a lot riding on it, obviously, especially because we saw them with that performance at Anfield, and it took Liverpool a while to get through that. So that could be the blueprint. No doubt, probably will be if they need a point. So there could still be some twists and turns in this race yet, but I still fancy Arsenal to do it. But especially after you've just given me the list of absentees, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they didn't hold on from here. But it also wouldn't shock me if both teams drop points. Honestly, because Tottenham could, I don't think they will against Norwich, but this Burnley game, I could see maybe being a little bit of a banana skin.
Yeah, especially because Burnley is still, I think they're only like 1 point behind Everton now. So yeah, it's really, I think it could even come down to this weekend, because if Burnley manage to get a result at Tottenham, that and we manage to beat Newcastle, then that's top four secured. So I think, wait, hang on, there's a draw with Burnley and Tottenham. That puts them equal on points with us, and then if we win, then yeah. So it needs to be a loss and a win for both teams respectively. But yeah, look, you sort of got your wish in terms of wanting to see a heated up race for the North London derby, and I guess the top four between the North London derby. So yeah, look, you're getting what you wanted, I guess, as a neutral from that perspective. And just before do you have anything else to add, or?
Well, I was going to say, like, obviously I'm a little bit torn because obviously I've got a few friends who are Arsenal supporters. So I do want them to make top four for that reason, obviously you, namely. But I mean, it's hard to like the team when Arteta does what he does after the game. I just thought that was a joke of behaviour. The way he acted in that interview, it was just ridiculous, man. He's so far up his own arse.
I haven't seen the interviews yet, so yeah.
You haven't seen the interview yet?
Nah, like I disconnected.
I refuse to. And look, I don't really like. Sometimes Jeff Shreves makes me uncomfortable with the way he interviews managers and like pushes and prods. But this time, like, obviously he wants his reaction to the game, and Arteta straight off the bat just comes out and says, "I can't say anything because I'll be suspended for 6 months if I say what I really think." And it's just like, dude, like, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't so egregious that you could just come out here and just flatly deny to answer any questions about the game. Just come up and face it like a man. Come on.
But it's not just
theatrics.
It's not. It might not. Yeah. Look, it might not just be that. Like, it might be if he comes out swearing and shit. And we know how. Like, we have Argentinian friends of that sort of Latin culture and everything, and Spanish culture and all that stuff. So, and we know how fiery they are. I don't know what the rules are. Whether, like, if he starts swearing his head off, not necessarily at the referee or anything, but like,
no, he's not going to swear. That's just unprofessional to swear, no matter who you are and where you're from. Like, that's just plainly unprofessional if you come out and swear after the game. But answer the questions, man. Like, seriously, to come out and just flatly deny from the off. And like, the game, the question was more about how the game went than any refereeing decisions. But and like we've already been through, the referee decisions. Yeah, they were, the first one's 50-50 and the second one, maybe on another day he doesn't get a second yellow or he doesn't get the red. But they're not so egregious that it's like we have been completely robbed here. They're 50-50 decisions. Your players have given the referee an opportunity to make the decision. So just answer the questions about the game like a man. Stop putting on these theatrics.
Like I said, I haven't watched the interview.
Gotta watch it.
So
I thought it was a joke of behaviour. Obviously,
I'll take your word for it. Now, to get you, I guess, even more wound up, and before we go, I guess we get into the meat of today's agenda, into the more interesting topics.
Actually, before we go, before we go on, I just wanted to add a little bit as well. It was so bad that Conte, in his post-match press conference, not the interview but the press conference in the room, he was actually commenting on it and saying, and he was actually commenting on Arteta's behaviour, saying I think I had to hear him complain all day. I think he needs to just focus more on his team. So it was so bad that Conte even wanted to comment on a fellow manager's behaviour during a game. It was ridiculous.
Well, look, let's I don't know.
I just wanted to add that. I know you've got to go away and watch it, but
yeah, I need to go and watch it, and obviously I need to try to take my bias out of it and stuff like that as well. So and I don't want to try and make excuses or anything like that, but I guess you're comparing a 39-year-old manager in his first managerial role to, I think he's 39, to like, Conte, who was like, what, 50 something?
No,
So
no, I'm not. I wasn't doing it to compare them. And
I
Conte
know,
did
I
say,
know, I know. I'm just, I
and
guess
Conte
I'm,
did say, to be fair to him, that he's young in the job, and like
yeah,
it
yeah.
was like advice from an older guy, but
Yeah.
still,
That's how I'm trying to, I guess, not excuse him, but like just try and make sense of
no, that's
why
fair.
he was like that.
He is a young.
Yeah, we need. I guess we can probably find similar. We possibly could find similar scenarios with Conte when he was like in his late 30s, early 40s,
Yeah,
and
well,
when
and
and Pep and Klopp and all that stuff.
I
Well,
think
we
of
saw it
Klopp
with
and Dortmund,
yeah.
100%.
Well, we sort of saw something with Pep last week have that little not necessarily an outburst, but like that just sort of like we saw like a little bit of nerves under the skin with that like Liverpool comment, like accusing the journalists of and like the whole country of being Liverpool fans, like so. And he's an experienced manager, and stuff gets under his skin that sort of like rattles him, I suppose. But I guess that's the sort of, I guess, since we're on a Man City manager and on Man City. And like we won't stay on this topic for too long, but I guess with the results, the 5-1 thrashing of Wolves, and now with the goal difference being, I think, 8, with 2 games to go. What do you think of the title run in? Is it all but a foregone conclusion, especially with the goal difference being what it is?
I'm ready. I'm ready to concede. What they just did to Wolves has just made me just completely ready to concede that it's gone. I mean, that Kevin De Bruyne performance, wow, what a game. What a player. Moment, a glimpse when Wolves made it 1-1. I even celebrated the goal, like a little fist pump and a yes. But Kevin De Bruyne quickly took away any notion that Wolves were going to get anything from that game with just a fan. One of the best performances we've seen all season, without a doubt. And that's including all the fantastic Karim Benzema performances we've seen this season. So with the stakes that high, to put in that performance is just brilliant. But it did make me think, and I always harp onto it, but I just hate that these two teams are going for the title, but they're not playing against each other. They're playing these other teams who may or may not have anything to play for. Like, I just think there might be a better way to do this, especially when you get to the point of the season where teams are safe and teams can pick up cheaper points and cheaper goals. And I'm not saying this is, well, it was a little bit like this because if Wolves had jeopardy on this game, I don't think they would have been they weren't open. I think they'll still try to play to their style, but the spaces were not that condensed. They weren't closing them down that much. They were open without being intentionally open. And if you give City even like a decimal point of a % difference in that aspect, they'll punish you. And I don't think it would have made a difference. I think City would have won this game because they looked right on it. They looked up for it, and Kevin De Bruyne obviously looked up for it. But do they win it 5-1? Probably not, because Wolves, remember when they were playing to be in Europe earlier in the season, they were a hard nut to crack. I mean, I remember Liverpool going there and it taking a late Divock Origi goal to win there at Molineux, and the spaces were so much tighter for that game. I don't think you can doubt that or question that. So it just made me think: can they be playing like, even in Scotland? I think they still have the system where the league splits in two, and you only play the teams in your half of the table. Even something like that might even be better, because obviously that would be the case in this Premier League game. But I don't know. I just don't like it that they're going for the same prize. They're clearly the two best, but they're playing these sort of irrelevant teams in the lead up to it. It's not as exciting as it could be, but yeah, I'm ready to concede after that Kevin De Bruyne performance.
Well, my only argument to that point would be that Aston Villa is in, I guess, that same sort of boat where they're not fighting for survival, and they're not fighting for any European spots.
Yeah, I agree.
But they
totally.
gave you a really hard time. So and then obviously Wolves, they're in the same boat, and Wolves have been on a downward trajectory ever since that double loss to Arsenal within like the space of 7 days or whatever it was, 10 days. Like they've been a shambles pretty much. Like people were talking about them for top four before those two losses. So it's interesting to see how they've just fallen apart. But yeah,
they're still 8th, though, aren't they?
I don't know. I think they've fallen off a little bit even. But like as you said, that Kevin De Bruyne performance. Yeah, I was hoping he would get a 5th goal, and the whole time I was watching that game, I was actually thinking, ever since that Madrid loss, maybe less so, I guess, at least at the beginning of the Newcastle game, but like as the Newcastle game went on, like it just seemed like City. I'm trying to think of the right analogy for it, but ever since that Madrid loss, it just seems like they're taking out their frustration and their anger on all the teams around them. But they've obviously only played 2 games since then, but like they have given the 2 teams an absolute battering, at least on the scoreline. More so Wolves with the performance, because I thought the Newcastle game, the scoreline was a little bit more flattering than what it should have been. But yeah, like they just stepped up a gear just to show how good they are, because they seem really pissed off. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, because it does look that way. I think the Newcastle performance was a little bit down to just tired legs, but they were still able to win it by more than they won this game by winning it 5-0. And to still have that killer instinct to get all those goals late, knowing that goal difference could come into it. And I think they would have wanted those goals anyway, because like you said, I think they're angry. They're angry about what happened in the Champions League. Everyone's angry. Guardiola's tetchy in press conferences, still talking about Liverpool. So, yeah, for a team of this quality, who for most of the season has been either the first or second best team in the world, probably most of the season the best team in the world, and in a lot of people's eyes still will be. It's sort of split, maybe, between them and Liverpool. It depends a lot on what happens in the Champions League final as well. But for them to only have one competition to focus on, and to do it in this manner with this angry mentality that's going to see them through to the end of the season, despite not having Diaz, despite not having Laporte, the team sheet gave me a little bit of confidence when I saw Fernandinho at the back, but I mean that was quickly crushed. They were angry. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that, and De Bruyne in particular was angry.
So I guess with all of that, and I guess with Kevin De Bruyne's performance, it sort of leads us into a perfect segue into, I guess, comparing him to other similar mold all-time great midfielders in the Premier League era. And Kev's already been in City for what now, 7 years, so he's sort of that long-term player. It's not like he's just come for like 2 years, lit the world on fire and then left. He's been a mainstay of that team as well. And I want to compare him, I guess, to Lampard and Gerrard to see, and I'm going to ask you to remove your Liverpool bias as well. But I want to see like how you rate him compared to those two. And I know we can chuck Scholes in there, but Scholes is a little bit of a older one, and he doesn't really remind me of that sort of box-to-box midfielder that would, and especially that midfielder that would drive into the box like a Gerrard and a Lampard, and that would score as many goals like that. And before we do get onto the debate, for me personally, and I think I said this to you and Matthias, like if I was to have my time again, and considering my my physical attributes, like especially my height. I think I'm like the exact height as De Bruyne, maybe like a centimeter or two off, and we're of a similar build in that we're not like a lanky crouch type build. We're a little bit wider and we're like a little bit stockier, I suppose is a way of saying it. He's obviously a lot more slimmer than I am, but I'm getting there. I'm trying to get down to De Bruyne's weight. But if I was to have my time again, and based on the fact that I believe that my physical makeup is of a similar mold to his, I would then try to mold my game to his, because his weak foot is absolutely fantastic. Probably one of the best weaker foots that I've seen of any player. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember a player. I can't name a player that has as good a weaker foot. Like Salah, I can't remember when he uses his right foot, or like Trent is one. I've seen him start to put in crosses with his left foot that they're very dangerous and they're very enticing for the attacking players. So that's one that could develop. He's obviously younger, so we'll see how that one goes. But if I was to have my time again, the way that De Bruyne moves and drives with the ball, attacks players, can shoot both left foot, right foot, and just has his power running and his, I guess, vision of the game. I would try to mold my game like his, just because I like his style so much. So with that being said,
yeah,
how do you compare him to Lampard and Gerrard at this current point in time before he's retired?
Well, before I go into that, I just want to touch on that. An interesting point you say about two-footed footballers. And for me, there's no doubt he is the best two-footed footballer, but it goes deeper than just his ability to strike the ball, in particular shooting the ball with the opposite foot. It's that he can control the ball much in the same way on his left side as he does on his right side. He feels just as comfortable taking it on that side and can do pretty much all the things he can do on the right side with his left side. And that just opens up so many doors for a player. I mean, I don't understand why players from young ages aren't dedicating themselves, especially in positions like that, in the central midfield positions, to being two-footed and to being able to do a high percentage of what you can do on your strong side on your weak side. Because like we saw in the first three goals, the hat-trick against Wolves was all left-footed. And that final strike that he arrowed into the corner was just sublime, the way he hit that ball. You wouldn't think that he's a right-footer, the way he hit that ball. So, yeah, I agree with that. I can't think of many off the top of my head who are so supremely two-footed like that. In the comparison, it's a hard one, and I've always said I think Kevin De Bruyne is he reminds me of Steven Gerrard the most. But that depends on where he plays, because now he's sort of morphing, and it'll be interesting to see if he could do it long term, because he's kind of morphing into the more Frank Lampard role now. But for me, if I had to rank them, and it's really hard, and we're splitting hairs, because by the eye test, I probably think that De Bruyne is the best technical player out of those three. Probably Gerrard second and Lampard third. But from the numbers, if he is morphing into the Lampard role and the Gerrard role that he did later or not even later, but when Torres came playing in that 10, we got to see it in the numbers. So if you go by the numbers, no doubt that Lampard's the best, because he had 10 consecutive seasons in the league of double-figure goals from that position, and I think he got 22 in the 09-10 season, that season they won with Ancelotti. So that's an incredible feat for a midfielder to get 20 league goals in a season. I think the only other one that springs to my head is Yaya Toure in the 13-14 season did that. I can't think of many other central midfielders who you could put on that list. And interestingly, could you put Yaya Toure on that list of Premier League greats who played like this? I mean, there's a lot of central midfield Premier League greats that you could put on it, but I think Gerrard and Lampard are the two that stand out. Probably Gerrard more so, because I think De Bruyne, you could see his City career sort of followed a similar trajectory in terms of, I know Gerrard in his early days was played maybe a bit on the right under Julia, but De Bruyne, when he came to City, played the deeper lying play, central midfielder, and even when, well, especially when Guardiola took over, he played one of two central midfielders. And now he's more used in that 10 role, like what Gerrard did under Benitez, just behind Torres. So, look, I think if I'm narrowing it down to those two, because in terms of the 10 or the goal scoring midfielder, I think Lampard takes that one. In terms of the all action, it's a debate between De Bruyne and Gerrard. I give De Bruyne the eye test technical side of it, but I can't put him above Gerrard for the driving your team on, the leadership, the ability in big games to come up big. I can't put him above him there because I know Gerrard never won a Premier League title, but Gerrard was huge in that team that obviously won the Champions League and then went to the Champions League final in 06, 07, and then went deep again the next year into the semi-finals. And yeah, especially if you look at that Liverpool team before Torres got there, that was a pretty average Liverpool team, and he was dragging 05 to the Champions League final and then the FA Cup final the next season. He was literally dragging that team to those major honours. So it's a really tough question. I think I've categorised it into those three categories, and I have a winner in each category. If you could get the best aspects out of each of those players, you'd have the super midfielder, but these guys are already super midfielders, so it's a really tough question. It's a good question.
Yeah, like you said, based on the eye test, De Bruyne definitely takes, I guess, he's a more technically gifted footballer. And the one thing that you brought up regarding the leadership, like aspect of it, and the way that he can drive his team, I haven't really seen that with De Bruyne, like at City or Belgium. I've seen it in, like, I guess, spurts, but not like sort of game in, game out, the way that Gerrard was sort of, the way that I would see him do it. If you're gonna then bring in, like, I guess, the titles into the mold, yeah, like Gerrard, he obviously has, like, all right, so international career, I think De Bruyne slightly pips it there just because he's made semi-finals of European cups and also the World Cup, but like neither of the three won anything in international. De Bruyne has 3 Premier Leagues, on the course for a 4th. He has an FA Cup, and that's pretty much it. And then Champions League runner-up medal. I'm not sure if he technically won anything with Chelsea, because I can't seem to find it here, because I'm not sure how long he was in the team for and whether Chelsea won anything.
Anyway.
Yeah, it wouldn't, because he was like a squad player. He wasn't really
Yeah.
featuring that much. But like in terms of Premier League titles, it's Lampard has 3 to his name, so he has the exact same amount as De Bruyne, but he obviously has a Champions League and a Europa League as well. FA Cup, he has like 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. So like he's, in terms of trophies, he's similar to Lampard. So it really all depends over the next, I guess, like sort of 4 or 5 years to see whether De Bruyne how long he's going to stay at City and how many more titles he's going to pick up as well. I think that would probably then define, I guess, who is the better out of them. I guess in more aspects.
Well, in that specific argument with De Bruyne and Lampard as well, though, I think that stat that I brought up about Lampard having 10 consecutive seasons going into double-figure goals from midfield, I think he needs to start doing that, because he's only hit double figures twice, I believe, in his time at City. And this season's one of them, obviously. He's up to 16, which is an incredible tally for a midfielder. But he needs to start hitting at least double figures regularly. He didn't do it last season. I know he didn't. It felt like he didn't play very much last season, and City still romped to the title. So, and that's a point I want to bring up when when I kind of talk about previous Premier League winners. But yeah, I think to match Lampard in that sense, remember Lampard still has a Champions League as well to his name as well. So he's still got a bit of catching just up to Lampard on that. I think if you look at like statistical resumes and stuff, probably Gerrard has the weakest case. And obviously I have Liverpool bias and he's my favourite Liverpool player ever. So there's a little bit of bias there, but I think it's hard to overlook the fact how pivotal Steven Gerrard was to particularly 04, 05, 05, 06, probably the whole run, in fact, from 05 to 2010 under Benitez. And I mean, I think De Bruyne and Lampard just had the edges in playing for better teams. While Liverpool got quite good around 07, 08 and 08, 09, I still don't think they're definitely not on the level that this City team has gotten to. And they weren't on the level that Chelsea team got to in 04, 05 and 05, 06. So he was a little bit unfortunate in that sense. But like, it depends how much, if you want to weight in the fact that he stayed with his hometown club and he worked his way up and he won that European Cup or that Champions League in 05, which is arguably the greatest Champions League final in history, probably the greatest comeback in a Champions League final. United fans will say 99, but they both got valid cases. So how much weight do you put to that, I guess, is the question. But statistically and resume-wise, Gerrard probably lags behind a bit. But I think anyone who watched him play and knew how much he meant to that team can understand why he's in this list with the other two guys.
Yeah, so I was going to bring that up as a point as well. You had Gerrard, who played it for, I guess, like, especially that early 2000s, like Liverpool were a far inferior team to Arsenal, United, and then Chelsea came along as well with Abramovich injecting like millions upon millions. So they were always the fourth or fifth best team in the early and mid 2000s. So they built in a different way, similar to how they've sort of built the squad now, where they're finding bargains and building the squad. But like, yeah, that they don't have that financial might that now City have, which is comparable to, I guess, what Chelsea were like 10 years ago.
Yeah, just before you move off this, that's a good point about the early 2000s Liverpool team, because I sort of, when I'm evaluating Steve Gerrard, I'm only thinking from about 04 through to about 2010, which was the golden years. And then I guess with Steven Gerrard, he had sort of this three-part career, because in that early thousands teams, while that Liverpool team, I wouldn't put them fourth or fifth, but they were lower, and they got a little bit close around like 01, 02. I think they finished second one of those years, and obviously they had the Mickey Mouse treble in 01 that got Michael Owen a Ballon d'Or. So Gerrard sort of started his career, and he was one of the main men for that Liverpool team, no doubt. But I guess he was sort of playing second fiddle to Owen, kind of what Benzema would do for Ronaldo later. Obviously not to the same level. But then he had that part where he was the main man. And then he sort of had that part where he was playing probably third fiddle or fourth fiddle to that near title winning team, obviously the infamous slip team. So if I think about like the other guys' careers, obviously the fact that they didn't stay at one club the whole time hasn't allowed them to do that. So yeah, again, just another little cherry to put into this comparison.
I think we should revisit this one maybe once we see the end of Kevin De Bruyne's career and see how it actually finishes up, because then I think it would be an actual worthy comparison, because right now he's only been at City since 2015 and he's already won a heap, and we're already putting him in the debate after, I guess, 7 seasons. So let's see how he goes. I think he just signed an extension as well for another 3 years, so he's going to be at City for another 3 years, unless they decide to sell him after 1 or even 2. So he's going to end up doing 10 years at City then, potentially. So maybe then we can actually judge how he actually compares to the other two all-time greats. And we'll just quickly move on to, I guess, and like we'll just stay on this one for like maybe 5 minutes because I know you want to talk about something as well. But just quickly, the PFA Player of the Year awards. Oh, yeah, they're coming up now. I think they're going to come up after the season is already done and dusted. There's already odds-on favourites for a couple of players. So we have Salah's obviously there. De Bruyne is there as the second favourite. Harry Kane is there as the third. Bernardo Silva is there as the fourth. And Van Dijk is the fifth favourite. Notable mentions are Matip, Becker, Trent, Saka, and Gallagher. I'm surprised that there's no Mane there. And I'm surprised that there's no Son there either.
I got a different list. The first five are the same, and then I got Foden, Cancelo, and Mane as the next three.
Yeah, so
but still no Alisson.
Yeah, Alisson as well is a good. Who, I guess, I know there's still 2 more weeks, and I guess like Son could pip Salah to the Golden Boot. De Bruyne could chip in with a couple more assists and goals to finish a little bit higher in the goals tally. And I'm not sure whether he's the leading assist maker in the EPL at the moment. Let's see. Salah is 13. Yeah, De Bruyne isn't even in the top 5, I guess, yet in assists. So it's how would you who for now, right now, with 2 games left, who is the player of the season for you?
Well, it's an interesting one because I was thinking about this briefly recently, and is there a better way to do these individual awards in terms of maybe putting in votes after each third of the season? Because when you split it up, there's no doubt who the first third of the season the best player was, and that was Mo Salah. He started the season like a house on fire, and he was unbelievable for really nearly half the season. So if you did it in segments, he would win the first half. Now, the second half, Thon's come on really strong now. I think Bernardo Silva's been consistent the whole season. I think Van Dijk's been consistent the whole season. But really, and I think Mane's come on stronger since winning AFCON, obviously, as well. So there's some candidates there for sure. But Son, just for his team's position, I can't put as high as the other guys. I think that's got to matter. The fact that he might not even make top 4. Now, if he scores, I don't know, a few more goals towards the end of the season and they pip Arsenal for that 4th spot, maybe he's in the conversation because then he has a golden boot as well. And he has been absolutely fantastic this season. So there's that. But for the fact of what I just said and the fact that the team's position and what you were able to do and achieve and take your team to, with his highest goal-scoring season in the Premier League so far, I think after what I saw at Wolves, for me it has to be De Bruyne. Because I think if Salah had sort of maintained a level, if Salah had scored an important goal against Tottenham and taken this race to only 1 point right now, then he'd absolutely be, well, he already is in the conversation. I mean, I'm saying De Bruyne, but I'm not saying it with my chest because I think there's worthy candidates. I threw out Alisson last week, and I still stick by that. I think he's been fantastic. Like I said, I wouldn't quite put Van Dijk in that list. I wouldn't quite put Bernardo Silva, but Bernardo Silva's been unbelievable. So it's almost gotten to the point where I might put Mane ahead of Salah because I think Mane's done more in this important period with Liverpool getting themselves back into the title race than Salah has, to be quite honest. I think Salah's really dropped off since that first half of the season. And since the AFCON final loss and the lack of World Cup qualification. So, and there was an interesting point. I don't want to make this about Liverpool, but an interesting thing I heard on one of the podcasts that I listened to was Liverpool throughout the squad have had sort of players bubble up and rise to the surface at different times, sort of like what you'd see in like thermal pools and stuff. So when someone drops off, another sort of pressure system will rise from a different place. So obviously the signing of Luis Diaz coming in, if he had a full season, he might be in the running. But Jota started really well. He's still one of the top scorers in the league, even though he hasn't done anything for a while. So I just thought that was an interesting point. But I think if you gave me three nominees only, probably De Bruyne number one, Son number two, Salah's still number three because he still is the top scorer. So I don't know how you see it, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, that the Salah one's it's a really weird one because he's dropped off since January essentially, since he went away for AFCON, whereas Mane has picked it up since then. So, and that's also I know last week I made a reference to esports, and I'll mention this as well because it'll sort of tie into weighting in terms of like the season. In League of Legends, in the European, I guess, division or region, they have a spring season and a summer season, right? So they have a spring champion and a summer champion. Now, the world championships are after the summer season. The summer season carries more points, more qualifying points for the world championship than the spring season. So they put more weight on the form that you're going to be in closer to the world championship. So you could make a similar argument where are you going to put more weight on this where the first half of the season Salah was in fantastic form and now he's dropped off, and Mane was in okay form at the first half of the season and now he's picked up. So do you put more weight on that Mane is doing it in the business end of the season, whereas Salah seems to have dropped off a little bit? That's one thing that I want to ask, or I guess sort of drop. Another thing I want to ask, and because you sort of alluded to it with, do you do it in thirds, like first third, second third, and then the third? Or how about they do a sort of Brownlow voting system where after every game there's a 3-2-1 for the best player in each game, and then the votes are tallied up at the end of the season, rather than, I think right now they vote at the very end of the season of who they thought that the best player was. That way, the Brownlow sort of system with votes after every game, that would be more akin to sort of weighting, because like a player like Mane, he might not have picked up many points at the start of the season, but now like the last couple of games he might have picked up 3 points in every single game for the past 5 or 10 games, for instance. So I'll ask those questions to you.
Well, it kind of just on your point of weighting, I don't think it changes the weighting, because Salah would have been using the Brownlow system 3 votes for a lot of the games he played early season because he was fantastic. And Mane would only still be getting the same 3 votes, even though maybe his contributions have meant more in terms of the pressure that was on the situation, but he'd still only be getting the three votes. So in terms of weighting, it would almost eliminate the weighting. But it gets into a different question for me, you bringing up this Brownlow thing, because in the Brownlow, the umpires, we call them umpires, but obviously if it was done with football, then using exactly the same system, then the referees would vote. I don't really sit comfortably with the referees voting for who the best player is. I know a lot of them are good people, but sometimes they just wind me up, and sometimes they give me the impression that they don't really know football. So I don't want them voting for who the best player will go down as in the history books for that season. I think journalists, for the most part, are a pretty safe bet, because I think you get the least biases with journalists. I know players are a fun one, and it's always fun to see who the players view amongst their peers as the best. That's always an interesting thing. But sometimes players can have, I don't know, like biased views, unusual views because of experiences, obviously, because they're living them, and they might not see the bigger picture. So I still think journalists are the best people to do it. But the Brownlow system would be the fairest way, I think, as long as you have the right people voting on it. Because there's no perfect way to do it, but it would be the fairest because that would literally just be who performed better in each individual match, and we'll tally it up at the end. So in terms of fairness, that will probably be it. But I don't mind having sort of the extraneous variables taken into account as well as just the match performance. So I'm just thinking, is there a way of tallying up votes at different segments of the season and then getting your winner at the end? That might be an interesting way, but for the most part, it's all right. I think we'll get the right winners. I know Salah's already winning the Football Writers. We'll see who we get as the PFA Player of the Year, but you got to think if they're voting soon, and this has happened for me because I said De Bruyne is number one, but last week I didn't say De Bruyne is number one. I said Alisson. So the fact that this has happened and he's put in a performance in a pivotal game like this, and if they are voting soon, then I think that will sway a lot of players to vote for De Bruyne, and you can't argue it because he's been fantastic this season.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see who ends up taking it, and it's going to be interesting to, because I think I also saw a quote from Salah saying that he's not only he said something along the lines of he's not only the best player in Liverpool, but he's also the best player in the league or in the world or something along those lines. It seemed like a very arrogant statement to put out. Probably annoyed some of his compatriots in terms of like maybe Diaz or especially Mane because he's been in better form. So we'll see whether he ends up taking the award or not after a statement like that.
Yeah, but when you're a player that good, you have that self-belief. I don't think it's out of the ordinary. I think Mane thinks exactly the same thing, to be honest. He thinks he's the best in the world. So when you get to that level and you're that good, all these players should be thinking like that. So he just vocalized it, which you can maybe keep to yourself. But
well, it's exactly what Real Madrid want going into the Champions League final. A little bit of tension between your forward line.
No, I think that got solved a few years ago. There's that famous image of Bobby Firmino standing between Salah and Mane in the tunnel at Burnley as they're coming off the pitch. And he makes a funny face to the camera because there's that tension between them. But for the most part this season, I think sometimes Salah has looked to pass to Mane to a fault sometimes. I think he's overcompensated at different times, and maybe Mane the other way around. So, yeah, I think there's a good tension, but it's been there all season.
Let's see how it goes. It'll be an interesting 2 weeks leading up to it. Now, you had an interesting concept on your hands. I want to hear it.
So I was thinking, the other day that not all league titles are created equal. I think there's discrepancies there, and it was brought about by what we will talk about on the last pod about second place finishes and the best second place finishes, and how at the end of the day in the history books, the first thing you'll see at least is who won the title, which is rightly so, because we have a system, we have 38 games that for more or less gets the fairest winner of the league. But it made me think of, are there years where we could have had debates? Were there years where it was very clear, but the gap wasn't, the team maybe didn't do anything exceptional, but they were clearly the best team? Or were there years where teams just really landed a knockout punch? So in using the terminology knockout, I wanted to go with comparing the league champions from the 03-04 season through to now, comparing their league titles to what a boxing decision would be in a boxing match. So knockouts are reserved for the teams who did something exceptional and basically knocked out the league in winning the title. I had two technical knockouts, which I'll get into, but that's like, it's a knockout blow, but it's not on the same level. You didn't lay someone out, okay? It's not quite to that knockout level. Then I have unanimous decisions, which I got a few. And then I had sort of between unanimous decision and split decision, I just had a little category. And then I had a category of no contest. And at the end of it all, I guess I'll go through where I had each team because I'm sure you're interested to hear that. But my question to you will be where you rate this Man City. What would you rate them on terms of this sort of criteria in the boxing decision list? But to give you an idea, for knockouts, I had obviously the Invincibles, Arsenal 0304. I had Chelsea the very next season, the team that Mourinho came in, led to the title, I believe 95 points. It was something ridiculous, like 16 or something goals conceded and only one loss that season. So easily a knockout blow for that team. I had the Centurion City team in 17-18. I think finished nearly 20 points ahead. And obviously the only team to get to 100 points. So that's the knockout blow of all knockout blows. Maybe some would argue the Invincibles, but their points tally compared to that, it was great, but it wasn't 100 points. And Liverpool in 1920 with the 99-point season. No one came close to get to 99 points as well. True knockout blow. And feel free to interject after any category or whatever. But then next, I landed on two technical knockouts that didn't quite get into that same category as those teams. And for those two, I had Leicester in 15-16 because they were considerably ahead of the pack, and they only lost, I think, 3 games that whole season, and 2 were to Arsenal. But that was a sensational, not only accomplishment by such an underdog at 5,000 to 1, but when you compare their league record to other teams, it's still an exceptional league record as well. So for those two factors combined, I had to give them a technical knockout. And then I had 2 Chelsea teams, the one in 14-15, both under Mourinho, 14-15, the return. That team only lost, I think, 3 games, and Eden Hazard was playing unbelievable football that season, and they'd won the title by halfway. If they kept on the same pace, then they probably could have had a knockout, but they sort of slipped away towards the end of the season. And the 05-06, the first manager to repeat Premier League titles other than Ferguson in the Premier League with Mourinho. I think they still only conceded 22 goals that second season, which is just incredible. They got into the 90s again for points. So the only reason that's probably not a knockout team is because of what they'd accomplished just the season before, which was even more remarkable. And then I only had one team, but they did it 3 times for a team that won the league by unanimous decision, where we got to the end of the season and they didn't do anything exceptional. They didn't do anything remarkable that where you look at the league record or you look at goals for, goals against, whatever it may be that made you think, wow. But they won it convincingly. You walked away from the season and that was the best team in the league, and I don't think you can doubt that. And I had United in 06-07, again in 07-08, and again in 12-13. I had to put these ones as unanimous decisions because the 06-07 and 07-08, that United team, had to knock off Mourinho and Chelsea, who were coming off back-to-back in the 06-07, and they did that. And then the 07-08 team was maybe United's best team. I could argue maybe the season after they were even better, but I've got them down as split decision in 08-09. But that 07-08 team, they won that league. On the points table, it wasn't actually, I think Avram Grant and Chelsea got kind of close. Or it might have been Hiddick who took over later in that season, but they got kind of close in the end. But I don't think we can have any qualms that United were the best team in 07-08. And they won the Champions League that season as well. So them, just because they didn't get to any remarkable league record or anything like that. I couldn't put them as knockouts, but I put them as unanimous decisions because they were clearly the best team. And then I had a couple between a unanimous decision and a split decision, where I had Chelsea in 09-10 under Ancelotti and City in 11-12. City in 11-12, I came away from that season, I thought they were the best team in the league. However, obviously you look at the league table and they finished on the same amount of points and won the league by goal difference in the infamous, famous Aguero moment, which we talked about, and we'll probably keep talking about that. It'll pop up in this podcast from time to time because what a moment. So it's hard to say that's a unanimous decision for a team that didn't even win the league by points. But I still felt that team was the better team that season. And then the Chelsea 09-10 season, United came close that season. They were going for 4 in a row as well. Let's not forget. But Ancelotti's Chelsea, they started really impressively. They were really good. And then they sort of fell away around, I think, maybe Christmas time. I think there was an infamous Man City went to the bridge and beat them 4-2 after the John Terry Wayne Bridge spat. So they just kind of flipped away a little bit and just went from being a unanimous champion to sort of maybe United were really good that season. Maybe you could put a little argument for them. I don't. Yeah, and then split decision, which is funny because this is arguably the best United team that I saw play in 08-09, but it coincided with the best Liverpool team I saw play of that time. And they beat Liverpool to the title. I think they won it by 4 points, but that's the Liverpool team that finished on 86 points. So I had to get to 90 points. And I thought that was a really good title race. That Liverpool team only lost 2 games. So that was probably United getting pushed to their limits. And you could say that United were the best team that season, but Liverpool were really close. That spine of Xabi Alonso, Mascherano, Gerrard, Torres, Reina, Carragher was really strong. So I don't know. Maybe you could push that one up to unanimous, but I had it as a split. And then City in 13-14, obviously that Liverpool team under Suarez again, I thought were probably just as deserving winners of that league title. But City, you can't. I think that season they finished with 4 or 5 players that finished with 20 plus goals. We just spoke about Yaya Toure getting 20 in the league. They had Negredo there who scored a lot. I think Jovic came in and scored a few. They had a lot of goal scorers. That was a really good team, but Suarez in that form at Liverpool, I couldn't look past a split decision for that. And then 18-19, obviously, infamous. They finished on 98 points after going 100 points, but Liverpool were on 97 and won the Champions League. So, look, it's probably showing my bias in the split decisions, but I still think you can make an argument that they're split decision because all those split decisions come with Liverpool being the second place team. But that 18-19 one in particular, I don't think you can argue that City were clearly the best team in the league after that, even though they finished on 98 points. And then I had 2 no contests, which were United in 10-11 and City in 2021. These were just instances where I just thought the league and the chasing pack were so weak behind it. City, especially last season, Liverpool depleted, still finished 3rd. United under Solskjaer finished 2nd. I mean, can we even imagine that right now? So I just think that's a no contest. And same with United in 10-11. Chelsea let go of the rope for that second season under Ancelotti. I don't think that United team was anything remarkable. Ronaldo had already left. Rooney was playing really well, I will say that. But yeah, maybe you could put that as a unanimous decision because Rooney had a really good season. But I don't know. Like that's going back to 03-04, and I guess, like I said, the question I had, unless you want to pick some bones with that, the question I had is where would you rate this City team if we had to give them a boxing style win?
Well, I want to just push back on last year's one. Wouldn't that be a unanimous decision as well? Because they were just so far ahead of the pack. Like, I know the rest of the league was awful, but for me, wouldn't a no contest be more like you have? It would be more like that top four race when Emery was at Arsenal, where like no team wanted that fourth spot between like 3 or 4 teams. Like, no one wanted it. You can't get a decider. So wouldn't that be similar for, I guess, a title race where you have like 3 or 4 teams all finishing on like 60 or 70 points in that sort of range, and like no team really wants it? Like, wouldn't that be sort of? But I guess you can argue that that's, I guess, a split decision as well from one perspective, depending on how poor the league is itself.
Yeah. Yeah, see, like if you had a few teams really close, that sort of warrants a split decision. The reason I wouldn't put these no contests into unanimous decision for me is because, like I said, I just thought the challengers were really weak in those 2 seasons. I didn't think there was a strong. If I look at the unanimous decision, United 06-07, they had to knock off Chelsea. They had a strong challenge. Mourinho stayed the whole season. Chelsea were coming off the back of 2 back-to-back league titles, so I thought they had to knock someone off. And then 07-08, that was an exceptional United team. They won the Champions League that season. They had Ronaldo win the Ballon d'Or. That was exceptional. City last season, yeah, they made a Champions League final, but so did Chelsea. Chelsea couldn't mount a challenge because Tuchel didn't come in until halfway through the season. Liverpool couldn't mount a challenge for obvious problems at defence. And then if you look at it, and Man United are finishing second with Solskjaer at the helm, I just can't give that as like a team on the level as those United teams that I mentioned in the unanimous decision.
Yeah, but it seems like you're taking credit away from City because, hang on, that was 2021.
Last season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they still finish on 86 points. Like, they're going to finish on... so this season they're going to finish on, if they win the last 3 games, or last 2 games, they'll finish on 95. So, yeah, I guess 9 points more, with Liverpool chasing them down pretty much until the last game of the season. I still wouldn't... I don't know. Look, I feel like it's a little bit disingenuous to give him a no contest for me.
It's not disingenuous. I started this by saying not all league titles are created equal. So we're splitting hairs from the very start. We're splitting hairs between league wins. Like, I'm not saying what they accomplished was utter shite, but I am saying for me it's not on the level of what some other teams have done. That's all I'm saying. And I have City in a list of knockouts, and I have them on nearly unanimous decisions as well, and split decisions. So it's not like I'm taking some shit out on City. I just don't think that team last season was that impressive, but it was still that much better than the rest of the league.
Yeah, and I guess with Liverpool finish on 69 points as well.
And we were talking about it before. It didn't feel like De Bruyne played last season for City, really, and they were still able to win.
Yeah. Was he injured for the beginning of it, though? Because I think he was injured for the end of the previous season when you guys ran away with it and they fell off.
Yeah, he got injured in that Champions League final, didn't he?
Not the finals last year. I mean, like the... So I think he was like injured for like pretty much all or most of the season where you guys ran away with it. The COVID season with an asterisk. That's why that one shouldn't be unanimous.
No, that's a knockout, mate. That's 99
whatever
points.
it is.
That's
mate.
Wins on the
you had empty stadiums. You had COVID. That's not a knockout. That should be a no contest.
Oh my god!
If anything is a no contest, it's the COVID season, man. Actually, last year
all of last season was empty, mate.
yeah, last season as well. All the stadiums were empty, and they were playing away. I think was the statistic last year that like that was like the most away victories for like I guess every team, like in terms of like away victories across the whole league. Like it was.
I have always wanted to see some research into that. Actually,
I think I saw something along those lines that they were saying it at one point in the season, like they were like this is the most amount of away wins teams have like the away wins that teams have picked up in a season. So that because they're obviously playing in empty stadiums, so like there wasn't that intimidating factor. So that for actually on second thought, for that reason, I think I might then give it a no contest just because of the fact that it was also played in empty stadiums as well. Your other question in terms of this season, this one would be a split, I reckon.
Yeah.
Even if you guys drop points, you're not playing this weekend. Even if City wrap it up this weekend, and like even if it finishes with a wider margin than 3 points, with you guys picking up your last two games and City picking up the last two games, even if it finishes like with a 4-point gap or 6 or whatever, or even 9 points, because it's pretty much gone down to the wire, I'd still give this one a split decision based on your, I guess, comparative analysis of how other sort of seasons went.
Well, you could put it between unanimous and split because I have that little subcategory that I put that City team in 11-12, even though they finished on the same amount of points as United. I didn't put them as a complete split because I thought the City team were a little better. So if you think that City have been better this season and fairly clearly, you could put them in that category.
Yeah, but the fact that they weren't able to beat Liverpool and Liverpool weren't able to beat them at all this season, you have to give that a split.
And I landed in the same place as you with that answer. But another thing you have to think about if you wanted to make the argument that this is a unanimous decision for City. City haven't lost the lead of the Premier League since December or January? They haven't been trailing in the race for the title. They've been number one since then. So you can point to that as a pro. This is a unanimous decision victory.
Yeah, but I still think that because it's... But then again, like they did drop, a 14-point lead though, even though they have stayed at the top. Like they still did have that blip in, I guess, February, March, that opened the door for Liverpool to come in. I guess if they didn't do that, then it would have been a knockout, right?
Oh, easily. They're going to finish on 95 points. If they stayed on that pace, they would have got to 100 again.
Yeah,
it's almost an automatic knockout.
Yeah, so I can see why unanimous would be given, because they, like, pretty much since Chelsea dropped the ball in late December, around that Christmas time, City have been on top for 6 months and 7 months by the end of the season. Yeah, it's between that, but just because they've drawn both games against Liverpool, if they at least won one and drew one, then you'd probably give it more as a unanimous. But 2 draws against the team that's chasing you down, not being able to pick up points against them, that I think that puts it more in the split decision for me.
Yeah, I agree. And just to think, like, if this City team and this Liverpool team didn't have to go against each other, they could arguably have a few other knockout title wins. I mean, City in 18-19 to get 98 points. Any other season, that's a knockout title win, no doubt. But that goes down as a split decision. And Obviously, that season, if Liverpool didn't have City, it would have been another knockout title win. So I don't know. I thought that was just an interesting way to decipher between the league titles that have been won since my time of intently watching football, which is about that 03-04 season.
It's definitely an interesting way to look at it. How would you rate that the Kevin Keegan meltdown season? That's going back a little bit further. Would that be a split or?
I think it would be a split because it was tight.
Was it the last match day that it came down to?
I'm not sure. I can't. To be honest, those '90s Premier League titles, I don't pay. Well, obviously because like I got older and I started paying more attention to football and understanding it more, so it's natural. But like even the quality in the '90s in the Premier League, you go back and watch games, and you even look at the names. It's like these guys, like they're good. Obviously, they're Premier League legends, some of them, but those United teams back in these days aren't touching the levels that the teams nowadays are getting, or even those three-peat winning United team in the late 2010s. So I don't know. I don't pay as much attention to that. But for the older generation, they might look at those ones as boxing decisions and probably have more informed answers than me on them.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to add though, like I personally believe that the Arsenal Invincibles should be considered a golden knockout, considering they got a golden they got a gold EPL trophy. So we'll put that one out there as well. That's a must have on there. Give that the golden tick of approval.
Anything to cheer you up after this morning?
I definitely need it. All right. Well, do you have anything else to add or talk about? I know the FA Cup is on over the weekend, but do you want to?
I think we should do a little.
We can
let's do a little preview.
All right, and then we'll finish it off on a bit of FA Cup action. So technically, Chelsea's playing at home. Actually, not just in the way that they've set up the fixture, like because the left team is always at home, but also considering it's in London, I guess technically they're at home as well. Yeah. Fun fact. So, how do you see that one going? Since you have a horse in the race.
Obviously, I have a horse in the race, but it's hard with cup finals. Liverpool haven't filled me with confidence the last couple of weeks. Obviously, the Villarreal game away, the Tottenham game at home, and then the Villa game away. None of them have been particularly convincing, but neither have Chelsea. Chelsea probably have the most convincing win of the lot at Leeds on the weekend, but Leeds did their self-destructing act. And you know how the other week you were talking about how they were a disgrace for throwing the paper. Well, I actually thought, I didn't think they were a disgrace for that. I thought it was stupid, but I thought they were a disgrace with the way they acted in the Chelsea defeat after Dan James's terrible tackle for a red card. And then the way they were going at Kovacic as he come off the pitch after he nearly got his leg broken, I thought was an absolute joke. And I thought Jesse Marsh's reaction on the sideline was irrational. He was acting as though they were wrong done. But you've just got to be logical and you've got to keep your head in that situation because you know what? If you act like an idiot, there's a chance you might be wrong. So maybe just bite your tongue and look back at the tackle after the game. Because if you saw it again, there's no way you can defend that tackle. That was a horrendous tackle. It could have ended his career. And so I don't know what the injury update is on Kovacic. While it's not obviously, I don't wish any injury upon him. It might be a benefit for Liverpool for him not to be in this game because I didn't actually read the article, but I was scrolling through Facebook and saw one of those clickbait articles about Steven Gerrard listing his best, I think, 6 central midfielders in the world at the moment. I think he had Kovacic on the list. which I think is fair enough. I don't know why he doesn't play more for Chelsea actually, but whenever he
Just
has
too many
played this
injuries.
season, you just have, yeah. Well, you just have to look at the game at Stamford Bridge between Liverpool and Chelsea, and that world class goal that he scored. And I thought he was putting in real good performances around that time. So him not being in the game's probably a little bonus for Liverpool. It'll be interesting to see who their midfield is, in fact, because I think Loftus-Cheek had to come on in that game. Chelsea, we know. I don't think motivation will be a problem. We know they have a lot of players leaving the club in the summer, but this is a cup final against Liverpool, and they should know fully well that if they play to their potential, then they make this game a 50-50 game. Because when they play to their potential, as we've seen in the league this season, I thought they were the better team at Anfield and should have won. And I thought at Stamford Bridge, while Liverpool had a good first 30 minutes or whatever it was and went 2-0 up, for the rest of the game, I thought Chelsea created enough to probably win the game again. So if they play to their level, there's no doubt that they'll feel confident that they should win this game. Mason Mount is playing really well at the moment. Scored another great goal at Leeds. And Lukaku obviously scored at Leeds. So it'll be interesting to see if he starts with Lukaku. If he does, I think that sort of plays into our hands a little bit more because I think Virgil van Dijk likes going against those physical strikers because, and rightly so, he feels like he can't be outfought by anyone in the world, and nor should he because he's a specimen. So that's an interesting decision for Tuchel going into this match. Liverpool, I think they're just in the same mode they've been in ever since they mounted this comeback in the title race, and that is every game is a cup final. Now you literally have a cup final, so the mentality won't really change. But I'm hoping that they could put in a better performance than they have in recent weeks. We could have a scenario where both these teams aren't playing at their best, so we have an even game anyway. I'm hoping we have a scenario where these two teams are playing close to their best, kind of like the game at Stamford Bridge, because especially that first half at Stamford Bridge, that was a really fun half, and the League Cup final as well. That was a really fun game, even though it finished 0-0. So let's hope that Chelsea come in the right frame of mind, because obviously they've been hit and miss recently. And let's hope Liverpool have the energy levels to put in a good performance so that we get to watch a really entertaining FA Cup final, even though I don't get to watch it live because I don't have Paramount Plus, because all the football is spread over like 5 or 6 subscription services over here. It's ridiculous, but I'll find a stream the next day and I'll watch it, no doubt. But yeah, I can't pick a winner because it's a cup final between, like I say, if these two teams play at their maximum, they're very even teams.
That's balls that SBS doesn't have the final. They had it for years, so you'd always get a free FA Cup. Yeah, that sucks. But I guess that all, like, they lost the rights to the World Cup as well. I think like some years ago or something like that. So yeah, everything's falling apart. Do you really think that Van Dijk relishes the physical battles against bigger strikers? Because I've seen him struggle against Giroud.
Giroud's a really good striker when it comes to playing physical, but I mean, struggle's relative.
I saw him with his hands full. And I know Lukaku's.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, and I know Lukaku is a little bit off form, I suppose. I know he did get a goal, so hopefully that will sort of, I don't know, cheer him up or something. But yeah, like I'd think that Van Dijk generally struggles in those battles. Like I think I'm trying to think. Was it Chris Wood that gave him a little bit of trouble, but he was mostly on was it Matip? So I'm not sure if strikers deliberately try to avoid him or not. But when I saw,
of course they avoid him.
Yeah, but when I saw Giroud, he was deliberately trying to like man mark him almost. So it was the opposite.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a different tactic. Well, I've seen him with his hands full, but he should have his hands full against the French World Cup winning striker from 2018. I mean, he can't have it easy all the time. But I think he prefers that when a striker's pinned up against him and he knows exactly where he is, rather than any runners from deep. I think, especially with Liverpool playing this high line, sometimes he's because he has to make so many quick decisions. He's caught between coming and going with those runners from deep. Should I stay in the line or should I track the run? Sometimes he gets caught out by that. So I definitely think he prefers a striker to be playing up against him. And most of them, to be fair, try and avoid that.
Yeah, I guess the counterpoint to myself is that I think Lukaku generally doesn't like to play like that. He likes to run in between the channels or sort of roll the defender, not necessarily play like with his back up against the defender's chest. That's at least what I've generally seen. So yeah, we'll see what kind of battle he gives it, and whether he even tries to take that battle against Van Dijk, or whether he goes over to Matip or is it Koulibaly? Is that no Konate? You wish you had Koulibaly.
Konate's pretty good. He might be Koulibaly.
He's actually been pretty surprising, like in a good sense. But yeah, look, it's going to be interesting to see where Lukaku finds his space and where he tries to match up against which of your defenders.
Plays.
Yeah, if he plays, of course. But I don't know. Like I don't know. He could go with Mount or Pulisic to try run in between those channels between the fullbacks to give you guys trouble, and then Havertz going through the middle, unless Havertz is injured.
Yeah, I don't know if he's injured, but if he's fit, I have a feeling he'll start with Havertz if he's fit. Because I think he prefers the striker not to play against those two centre-backs, and he wants more runners from deep.
Yeah, so we'll see how that all plays out, I suppose. It should be definitely based on the 3 games that they've had this season, it should definitely be a very good game to watch for the neutral.
Yeah. I think that's what we're hoping for. Obviously, I'll take a boring game as long as Liverpool win.
And it's
cup final. It's a cup final. I do want to watch some it.
It's interesting though. Like a week ago, 2 weeks. Yeah, a week ago, you guys went from potentially winning the quaddie to. If you guys win this, or unless you guys lose this weekend, you guys could just walk away with the Carabao Cup.
Yeah, and I said that was a possibility. I think on the last pod that there's a chance that we only walk away with the Mickey Mouse Cup.
Yeah, I think when we actually do our Champions League preview closer to it, I'm gonna drop an interesting superstition or statistic for you to nibble on. So maybe
leave me waiting now.
Yeah, well, if you want to go on the web and research it and try to find that little nugget, that's up to you. But I'm gonna drop it the week of the Champions League. So we'll see.
Well, with no clues.
Huh?
No clues. How am I going to find it with no clues?
I'll just go. I'll try. Hang on. Let me try to think of a clue off the top of my head. All right. So basically, I think the last time it didn't happen was the Chelsea win against Bayern in 2012. So you have to go like 10 years back to find when it didn't happen, when it didn't contain a certain type of player. So you got 10 years of dogma or karma or whatever the hell it is against you. Witchcraft.
I'm scratching my head. I'll think of it.
I'll give you another clue. Dan Lovren pointed it out last year. I think I'm not sure whether he put it on an Instagram story or whether he put it on just like an Instagram post. So maybe it's still up there after last year's Champions League win by Chelsea. Maybe it's still there if it wasn't a story. But Yeah, he's the one that clued me in on that statistic.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it if I don't figure it out before then.
Yeah, well, we're 2 weeks away from that final, so you're gonna have to hold your horses for another 14 or so days. So, I think that's a good way to end today's podcast, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. We've got, a few Premier League fixtures on the weekend. City playing?
Yeah, they're playing West Ham, I think.
West Ham. So the last chance to lose, but
West Ham at home, I think, isn't it?
I think they're away. I think they're at home against Villa on the last day. I think.
Yeah, it is. It's in London. Yeah. Well,
so last chance for them to lose, really. But there's so many goals ahead now.
Yeah, that doesn't help your cause.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Anyway, Caleb, it was with an interesting FA Cup and FA Cup final and some enticing fixtures over the weekend with the top four and I guess relegation and even the title to an extent. Should be interesting to see how those results pan out, and I guess we'll discuss them next week.
Yeah, can't wait, mate. Thanks a lot. Always a pleasure, and I'll let you sign off.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Anyway, thanks for coming, and bye for now.